Hello and welcome. This is Christian from Vision 6D. We are going now to discuss margins or slack in a project. What are margins? Margins are time, free time if you want, that you give to your project in case that something happens. I can take an example. We have here a project where you see we have first here an initiation. It's when we prepare the project. Then the conception, it's more or less when we do the design or we evaluate things, and then we really implement the things. In this case, it's a CRM project. It's a customer relation management system that a company wants to put in place. So here I have, as you see, the schedule of the different tasks we'll have. The particularity of this project here at the end, you see how it is planned. The production time will be here in early January, and you see that during a few weeks here, nothing happens in the project. So what does it mean? It means that, of course, we could have set into production way earlier that project, but we haven't chosen this because we know that whenever you are in a project, unexpected things are going to happen. And usually those things, they delay the project. So at the level of preparing the project proposal, when you do the planning or you do the budget, expect to have some time left somewhere in the project in order to compensate in case that something happens. With that in mind, you can guarantee the delivery on time. As you see here, all my tasks are in blue, which means that we aren't on the critical path. To check this, you see here that I can select the critical path and critical tasks. Although I've selected it, no one of the tasks here moved to a red color, meaning that it would be on the critical path. So if now in this project, I have here in the middle integrator 1. Let's see and simulate what would happen if integrator 1 from his function gets promoted. And due to this, he cannot continue the project. So we will see on this task here what happens if we have to replace that person. For that, I will admit that we will delay the task, which is here server installation. I will split it in two and delay it by 1 week. As you see, I'm splitting the task, and now I'm going to move it by 1 week to simulate what's going to happen. And you see that the task here has been delayed, and so far we don't see any changes here. Now we have to admit also that integrator 1, you see here, was also involved in other tasks. So we can also admit that those tasks will also be delayed. So I do the same operation. I split the task here and I move it forward. And all of a sudden you see that we've reached a certain limit. So this limit, it means that all of a sudden all our tasks which are on this path have become critical. What does it mean? It means that if any of the tasks that is on the critical path is now going to be delayed, we won't be able to deliver the project on time. So I will just go now back one step before I did the last change. And you see here that all the tasks are still in blue. I will now go and ask the system to show me what is called the slack. And you see that all those tasks here that are prolonged by something, this shows that there is a margin or a slack. So you see that here down, when there is the production run, we still have a slack of a few days here before. If now I go back to the situation where this task had also to be delayed due to the promotion of integrator 1 that will be replaced by another integrator, and I move it by just a few days. We see that it's still fine because the margin which is here down is absorbing the difference. If now I continue to move this by a few days, you see that all of a sudden all the tasks which are on the path have become critical. It means that we've eaten now all the margin we have. So it means that we could absorb this change in the project without disrupting the production date. But if we prolong it now even more, we will have, and you see that MS Project is moving the production date. Let's now take another aspect of the project. It's concerning costs, where maybe we should also have the possibility to cost the project. In order first to have an overview of the cost of the project, we'll go into reports, and there we select the dashboard, the cost overview. You see that this project's budget is 146,000, and I won't enter the details of those diagrams here, but they show you how the budget is going to be spent over time. So in which sense could we have margins in the budget? So I will first take an example of a situation. While we went on in this project, the integrators understood that it wouldn't be practical to do some of their test work while the users want to do their test works. So initially, we can see here, they had prepared to have 2 servers. This is part of the cost. So the 6,000 plus the 4,900, it makes 10,900, which is the cost that we see here. So if we continue down and we admit here that when the users will also start to do some of the tests, or even here during the training, we will need 2 more servers. So we will, for example, here at the first training, add some costs through going to information, and here there within the resources you see that we will add some resources which are servers here, and we say 2 of them. Okay, so we see here now that all of a sudden the price of that first training has risen up to 19,280. We will now look at the cost reports. So we go again into the dashboard and cost overview. We see here that the costs have increased in this project. I had done a baseline like that. We can have a reference of the project before we had those changes in the project. So I go again into reports and I go here into the cost overrun. And you see here all of a sudden a cost overrun of 6,000. So meaning that you would have to present this at the board, at the steering committee of your project, having them to understand that there is a variance in the cost of 6,000. Now, if we would have had a margin about cost, it would have absorbed maybe those 6,000. So let's see how we could do that. I go back to the Gantt chart. To add a margin in terms of budget or cost, I've added here a task that I call reserve. You can place it somewhere. What is important is that it stays there. You see that I haven't put any date on it, but I've put an amount. So it means in this project, where the total cost of the project is 156,000, I have a reserve of 10,000. Like that, I'll be able to absorb some of the costs overrun. To show you now in this situation a change in cost of the project, I'll do first for the project a new baseline, meaning that the project as it is now with the reserve is the new base to which we will compare the project. So I set the baseline, I say okay here. And here, are you sure? Yes, I want this. We check first with the report, how is the project? Cost overview, you see, it has increased compared to what we watched before. And I take another report, which is the cost overrun. Just to let you see that at the moment I haven't changed anything. I have a reserve, I have a new baseline, so I have no costs overrun. I go now into the Gantt chart. It's when the users want to start their tests that they need those two servers. So I have here the task 36 as a value of 13,000 that I will now edit the information for this task and add the two servers. Here I select my servers. I'm saying that I need 2 units of them. Each unit is 3,000. So it will increase by 6,000. You see it happening here. And of course, here the reserve, we have to change it by hand. And this is where you need to pay attention to. So there were 10,000. Now the reserve is left with 4,000. Make a note of the change. Okay, this is simple enough. Like that, there is the note that you can always remember what was the reason of that change. We will now look at the reports again, and we will directly go to the costs overrun. Costs overrun, we see here the cost increase, how we had defined it for servers. You see the 6,000 additionals that we have here. So we could think that with that we have a cost overrun, but this is a cost variance. And here down is what is interesting. It's the total cost of the budget. You see that it was 156,465. This was the reference cost, and here is the actual cost. And you see here the cost variance of 0. So this means that the reserve has absorbed that variance in cost for a specific task. As you see, it's not always easy to have a project that ends on time and to leave at the end of the delivery time of the project some margin. So especially that people are always in a hurry to get the things. So what we can do is to add some tasks into the project that you have. For example, here we have the system integration, and I would like to have an additional 1 week of lag or margin. So I could just here add a task, which in fact is a fake task. It could be analysis. An analysis of the integration or the systems. I'm adding here 5 days of analysis. I will now say for this task that its predecessor is task 32. And here for the continuing task, which is the test user interface, of course that I have also here to change for the predecessor being task 33. With this, we'll see the change into the diagram. And we see here that everything has been slightly moved. With that, I have now a reserve of 5 days in my tasks here, which is added as a new task system analysis. What it means that whenever I have a task before that would be delayed, I will simply here reduce the duration of this task. Meaning, for example, that if I take the case that I've discussed, I will here, for example, split this task and delay it now by a few days. We will need accordingly to reduce by a few days that task, which we know that in reality this task doesn't really exist. So this is the way to insert a margin in a project. You saw that you can make margins really appear as I had done previously, or you can hide margin into tasks you know that they don't take that long or don't exist at all. So I've shown you now two ways to have margins in a project. One which is time-wise, which is in order to keep the delay of the project in case that anything happens in the project. And the other one was an approach on the budget on how to have some reserve in the project. With that, I gave you some insight about margins. I hope that you understand that to have a successful project, it's important to have margins. There are companies where they refuse any project if there aren't margins, and there are some others who just don't live with margins. So I can just recommend you, before to start any project, to give a planning, to give a budget, put a certain margin into your project. With that, you are ready now to do your own experiences. I hope you like the tutorial. If you do so, you can thumb up, comment, or subscribe to my channel. It was a pleasure and hope to see you soon. Bye!